In this video, Dr. Jordan Peterson explains how the unknown gives you the information you need.
I mean, imagine this. Let's say your eyes are closed and you have a basketball and there's a pillar in a room and you're trying to figure out what's in the room, and all you can use is the basketball, but you can move around. You could bounce the basketball off that pillar a lot, and sooner or later you develop a visual image of it, right? It's a low-resolution investigative tool, a basketball. But you could still use it if you're bouncing off it, so to speak. You can build up a representation of it. And so, from the Piagetian perspective, that's how a child builds up the representation of the world. That's how it creates the world. It creates the material world for itself that way, by banging up against it. And at the same time, it's learning how to bang up against it in ever better ways. So the unknown, which is the thing that attracts the child's attention, can be best concept. So imagine this. Here's another, here. So the child is surprised by a mobile that it kicks. The child is surprised when it drops a clump of baby food on the floor. The child is surprised when a glass of water tilts over. The child is surprised when he pulls the dog's tail and the dog barks. You know, the child's surprised all the time. Okay, so then the question is, what is the similarity between all of those surprising events? If you had to categorize the category of all surprising events, what would that category look like? Well, you might think, well, that's not an appropriate category. It's like, well, it's not clear that that's not an appropriate category, because the category of all surprising events is exactly the category of the unknown as such. And as I said before, it's better to know how to deal with the unknown as such than it is to deal with specific aspects of the unknown. And that's exactly what was expressed in my nephew's dream, right? He wasn't going to fight off the little dwarfs. There was no point in it. He had to go to the thing that was the source of the trouble and fight that. And you know, that's how people are. That's what our most archetypal stories are about. So some of you are Star Trek fans, perhaps. What's the motto of Star Trek? It's to boldly go where no one has gone before, right? And everybody's pretty happy about that, you know, and it's very, very basic archetypal story. But it does encapsulate the human relationship with reality. We think of reality that way. We think of the known and the unknown, and we think of there being a boundary between the known and the unknown, and we think about being on the edge of that boundary and looking over. And that's the archetype of exploratory behavior. Now the serpent symbol is even deeper than that, because the serpent symbol represents the world before it's even been categorized. It's like, what's there when there's no one there? That's what this symbol represents. It's the ultimate in the unknown. It's the source of all things. And so it's infinite and self-contained, and it's matter and spirit at the same time. And partly it's infinite because you never run out of unknown things, and it's eternal because you never run out of unknown things, and it's matter because when you interact with it, you conjure up the material world, so to speak, in all sorts of different ways. You know, sometimes by actually crafting material things, and other times by merely defining the material of the space that you're in. But you also extract information out of it to build yourself out of. Because you might say, well, where do you come from? Well, part of it is, there you are, you have a biological structure. But obviously we think of nurture. You're extracting information from the environment all the time. Now, you might say, well, how do you do that? And I think there's a variety of ways. One is, you know, Piaget would say, well, you mimic the world with your motor apparati. So, for example, when you look at the can, this is part of looking at the can. The can is a graspable object. That's the can. That's how you define it. So this is like the can. And so that's a pattern insofar as it's stable in space across time. It's a pattern. And you can match that pattern. And so it's a transfer of the pattern here to a transfer to the pattern here. And that's the use of information. Information is information. There's lots of different definitions of information, by the way. But the information that we think of as information is that you can gather, that you can then use. You incorporate it, and then it's in you, and then you can use it. So insofar as you're constantly adjusting to the external world and its demands, You're reproducing the pattern of the external world in your body. That's one form of representation. That's an informed representation, and then you abstract out of that to make your abstract representations. But the point is, you're pulling the information out of it. So the unknown is the ultimate source of information. And it can be very, very dangerous. But it doesn't matter, because it's less, the human supposition is that the unknown is there and it's dangerous, but the best thing you can do with it is confront it voluntarily when it makes itself manifest, when you're prepared. That's your best bet. And that's our archetype, fundamentally. That's our bet on reality.